Welcome to This Week in Gaming, the show where I quickly cover what happened this last week in gaming in case you missed it. Starting with Romero Games potentially shutting down after losing their funding. They recently made a statement saying they had lost funding for the game that they were working on, and they didn't say it was Microsoft, but it happened at the exact same time Microsoft laid off 9,000 people. But after the news broke, Romero Games did respond saying that they're in talks with different publishers to see who's gonna step up and fund the game, and that everything's okay and the company isn't shutting down. In Subnautica 2 news, it's looking like they're facing a lot of drama and lawsuits are on the way. Recently it was revealed that 3 of the key members were fired, including the original founder of the original Subnautica. Announced that they were going to be delaying the game into 2026. That it's just that they need more time to make the game better, and in fact, they got abandoned by the 3 people and that they didn't fire them. They had promised their developers a $250 million bonus if they reached certain numbers by the end of 2025, and now apparently there are lawsuits coming. And next, the gaming industry responds to Stop Killing Games with a lot of BS. They responded by giving us reasons as to why Stop Killing Games is bad, like saying that running a server forever is just impossible. Them lying isn't surprising. But what is surprising is the fact that they answered it all. This goes to show that the movement is actually gaining enough traction that developers are starting to get worried that they're no longer going to be able to rip us off. Ubisoft comes into the ring by changing their EULA, because their update says that if they no longer support the game, you have to delete your version and destroy any hard copies you have. The fact that they're trying to do this shows just how scummy these companies are and how important Stop Killing Games is. And then in Nintendo news, we start off with the Nintendo Direct that everybody was super excited for. Well, it's Sunday and it still hasn't happened, but after my video, the leaker did confirm that they had information that said that it was either going to be this week or the end of the month. In other words, sometime this month, maybe. And then a Russian developer came out and said they had an emulator for the Switch 2, which is probably a scam. And even though a lot of people reported on it, guys like RGT85 quickly pointed out that it was just the trailer for Mario Kart World, so it was just fake. And ever since that happened, this Russian developer took down their videos, saying that it is a real emulator and that people are just haters. And anybody who calls them out on it, well, they're just harassing them and they should be reported. So if you downloaded this emulator, make sure you delete it and change all your passwords because you're probably gonna get hacked. Digital Foundry tested the Steam Deck versus the Switch 2, and the results were pretty interesting because the Switch 2 was more stable, but the Steam Deck performed just as well. But we have to remember that the Switch 2 has an optimized version, whereas the Steam Deck is using a Windows version and it's running on Linux. But the biggest shock was that the Switch 2 has half the battery size as the Steam Deck, yet it was able to last just as long, showing just how conservative the Switch 2 is with its power consumption. And there was a developer that said because of the Switch 2's power, it's going to be one of the greatest sellers ever. And the reason they think this is because the Switch 2 is actually able to perform almost as well as the Series S, even though the Series S is more powerful, which will allow third-party games to be on the Switch 2, along with the Nintendo exclusives, making it a really great bargain. And in probably the biggest hot button topic, people are getting banned for using used games on the Switch 2, because someone has reported that they went out and bought a whole bunch of used Switch 1 games, and when they were installing them on their Switch 2 got banned. But it's not all doom and gloom because they were able to contact Nintendo and Nintendo helped them unban their system. But that means if you're trying to save some money by buying used games for your new Switch 2, you run the risk of getting banned if someone's already dumped those games before you. And that's what I covered this week in gaming. So if you want to keep up to date with all the gaming news that's out there, make sure you hit that follow button. And if you want to find out more in-depth information about each one of the things I covered, they're all in my videos from this last week. All right, see you next time.